Welcome to episode 70 of the Mountain Mantras Wellness and Life Lessons podcast. This podcast aims to inspire you with wellness and performance tips so that you can incorporate them into your daily life. I'm your host, Catherine Kemp-Gailet. My guest today is Beth Medina. Beth is a Florida licensed mental health counselor in a private practice, a certified advanced Brainspotting practitioner consultant, and online business coach for professional solopreneurs. Beth is also the vice president and founding member of the Southeast Brainspotting Institute, an educational 501c3 that promotes the utilization of brainspotting as an effective therapeutic modality to reduce unwanted suffering, promote personal growth, and develop professional competency. By adapting brainspotting for use in the online business coaching setting, she helps professional service entrepreneurs break through the mental blocks that keep them stuck, exhausted, and broke. So this is going to be a really amazing interview. And I just want to say I'm on this brainspotting interview roll. I have interviewed Santiago Brand. I have interviewed Jen DiLorenzo, Paige Roberts, Jessica Crowley. So listeners, if you're like, brainspotting, what is this all about? And it's such a cool modality. I actually just got back from spending the weekend with David Grand, the founder, at a phase 4 training. So it's applied to so many different circumstances, but this particular interview is going to be about how Beth applies it with her clients to bust down these limiting beliefs that we all have around money so that more abundance can flow into our lives. So welcome to the show, Beth. I'm so excited.
I am so happy to be here. When you contacted me, I was so amazed at all the things that you've been doing. I mean, I am such a fan of yours, so I'm just so blessed to be here.
And this is so great that you use brainspotting in a very different way, because these past 5 or so interviews that I've done, we've talked a lot more about trauma, what trauma means, how trauma affects us, and how it puts us in the past. And so today's going to be very different. And it's interesting because I am mostly interested in how to apply brainspotting to the more expansion model, to, being the best versions of ourselves, working with the athletes in the area where I live, the highest density of Olympians in the world. It's all about peak performance. But before we can get there, we've got to kind of break down some of these things that are hardwired into our system that we might not even be aware of. So, Beth, I thought it would be fun to start out with some of those limiting beliefs. What are they? Let's go through them. We can even make this a brainstorming session. What are the things that money is the root of all evil. We could go through religious teachings and all this stuff. When we are super little and we hear these things, what are those beliefs and how do we start to break them down? So a little brain spotting, brain session, sort of breakthroughs.
Brainstorming with brainspotting. I love it. Yeah. We all have beliefs that we know are kind of a little bit whacked, but sometimes we have beliefs that we're not even aware of that are impacting us. We think it's just the way that things are. So everyone's heard that, money is the root of all evil. And we've heard things like you have to work really hard to earn money, and those kind of things. But there are even more subtle things that we may not be aware of. And I'm hoping that we can get into that today. When I work with clients, sometimes they have an idea about what their money blocks are and where they come from. Okay. So maybe a person grew up and maybe their parents didn't maybe they didn't know how to spend money properly, so they overspent, and so they maybe grew up without having proper food or shelter or those types of things, or they were born into an impoverished environment where there wasn't really much of an opportunity for them to really advance, and so they may have beliefs around money such as I have to save everything that I earn because there's not going to be enough, or it's not okay for me to be as successful as I'd like to be, because then I would maybe make my parents look bad, or I would make my family envious of me, and those types of things. So sometimes people are pretty aware when those things are happening. But I find with business owners and just with people alike that sometimes they're not even cognizant of the fact that they have a deep seated belief about money. Sometimes it ties to self worth. Sometimes it ties to if they're feeling like, well, I can't charge as much as I need to charge or as much as I want to charge for the service that I'm providing because people can't afford it, or people won't pay that much, or people will think I'm greedy. People will think that I am an egomaniac if I charge this much, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so there are so many things that can come up with money issues that we really need to be paying attention to in our own lives.
So, Beth, I sort of interject these little mantras into the show, and I already have two, and I thought maybe we could dive deeper into both of them.
Yeah.
So, the first one, and I'm just going to use your word because I thought it was really funny, and that is that we have whacked beliefs about money, right? And some of these
Hmm.
are obvious, right? We talked about money as being the root of all evil. One thing that you said reminded me that money doesn't grow on trees. Who's heard that, right?
Hmm.
Money means hard work. Money can cause strife for those of us. I mean, again, you didn't necessarily say it, but I'm like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, like I remember my parents kind of fighting about money, so, and then another thing you said was I have to save everything I have. And that can come from well-intentioned lessons from parents that kind of become this like straitjacket that people have where they can't spend their money. And by the way, this reminds me, Beth, that there's this really great guy who wrote this book called Happy Money. I think his name is Ken Honda. I think he will be the next sort of what Marie Kondo did for clutter clearing.
Hmm.
He might do from the Japanese standpoint of sort of, the aesthetic and simplicity and stuff. He's kind of doing for how we spend money and earn money. And he's just like, when you receive money, like be happy, right? And then when you spend
Hmm.
money, be happy. It's just
Yes.
this really kind of sweet thing. But anyway, we can go there later. But
Mhm.
first, on that the second mantra is that some of our beliefs are deep and subtle. You said,
Mhm.
and you said people might think things like, people just won't pay that price, or I will look greedy if I charge that much per hour. So I thought it would be fun. Can we dive deeper into like the obvious ones, like money doesn't grow on trees and money is the root of all evil, and then go
Mhm.
into some of the subtle things that you see in your work with clients?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's how do we attack those obvious beliefs like money is the root of all evil? And we can talk about how you use the brain spotting modality
Mhm.
to address these issues.
Yeah. So you're going to start with the statement, money doesn't grow on trees, or money is the root of all evil. When you hear those words, just take a second and notice what comes up for you. So you can tune to what's happening physically in your body. You can see if any memories come up, any thoughts in particular about that, and just see if you can tap into something deeper there. So with money doesn't grow on trees, that's a great one. Sometimes what might happen is if you think about that statement, you might get a picture of your mother, clipping coupons and and maybe buying the dented cans in the grocery store because money doesn't grow on trees and we have to save. And what happens with some people is when they hear that money doesn't grow on trees, they get this restricted, constricted sort of feeling, and it's really uncomfortable. And so this might lead to something that a lot of us struggle with, and that is throwing out the budget, because budget feels like I have to be, in this box, and it feels very restrictive. And so sometimes people don't even set financial goals, and that can be really disastrous to a person's financial state.
So it sounds to me like, and I'm just guessing, and I want you to elaborate on this, that when you're working with clients to help them to overcome their money obstacles, that you're using a combination of, the deeper tools like brain spotting, where, you're identifying that feeling in their body, you're finding a brain spot, and then the focus mindfulness around processing through what those beliefs are so they can be released. And the other part is sort of the tactical, like, let's talk about how you budget, who's paying the bills in the house, or again, sort of paint the picture for how you work with clients so people can get a sense of, like, is this doable? Can I break through these money,
Right.
barriers? Or are they going to follow me around for the rest of my life? Right.
Right. Yeah. So I work in my psychotherapy practice with psychotherapy clients, but I also have a coaching business, and so I work with coaching clients. So it's two different kind of animals. If we start with a psychotherapy client, so a person comes in and they are having some issues around maybe overspending because they, especially, this is really interesting. I think that when we think of overspending, many times people think about maybe people who don't earn a whole lot of money, but I find that sometimes the more people earn, the more they spend. And so you can be a very high income earner, but not have a whole lot left to show for it. And so when clients are aware of that type of thing, first of all, I start with, let's set a goal. Where are you at right now and how much money would you like to save? How much money would you like to have for retirement? Sometimes what has to happen is that clients have to face those really difficult discussions with the spouses because, as we know, money can be a huge issue in marriages and in relationships. That tends to cause a lot of strife, but sometimes communicating about money can just seem so difficult. And so it's not just coming up with that physical written plan. It's noticing what happens in your body and using a technique like brain spotting to be able to break through those limiting beliefs and those and the stuff that's stored deep in the nervous system. We know that when something traumatic happens, it's not just something that we think about, but it affects our emotions, and it actually affects all of the cells in our body. And so the same thing happens when we have money traumas. So maybe a person experienced something where they lost all of their money in the stock market, for example, or a significant amount of it, and they were counting on that money, to be able to retire, and now they can't. Or maybe that was their parents. So there's an impact on how we view money right now and what we're doing with our money, and it can be really a difficult thing to break out of. And so if I have a client who is trying to save money, but they're having difficulty, or they're having conflict with their spouse over the money, I might bring both of the parties in, and we can get our own brain spot. So, and how brain spotting works is we use the visual field in order to access and locate the places where the traumatic stuff is held, or the stuff that's stopping us, stuff that's limiting us, where it's held in the brain and body. So in brain spotting, we use a pointer, and I'm able to help the clients find that place in their visual field. And I'll hold that space for them and hold that place for them as they just attune to what's happening physically in their brain, or in their body, noticing any thoughts, memories, any kind of stuff that comes up, and just naturally allowing the process to flow. We all have an ability to heal ourselves, and we just need to have a way of accessing that. And so that's what a brain spotting practitioner does for clients. Okay. So if I'm working with somebody in my coaching practice, people come in and they say, let's say that I'm a business owner, and maybe I'm a chiropractor, and I want to be able to earn a certain amount of money more than I'm earning now. And I have a whole lot of stuff that I'm worried about. I have all of the equipment that I'm renting. I have to pay staff. I'm also worried that I won't be able to sustain my practice because the insurance companies keep rejecting claims and their benefits are getting less and less. And I'm worried that I won't be able to keep my doors open because it's just too much work. So I may know that deep down I need to stop taking insurance. But for me as a chiropractor, that really freaks me out. And so if that person comes to me, well, we can work on what's stopping them and what's worrying them. And maybe they're aware that, well, I'm worried that people won't be able to pay. And we can start there. But as the processing goes on, we're going to see that there's stuff underneath that. So if you think about an iceberg, there's the tip of the iceberg that we know this is part of the problem, but there's all the stuff underneath. So it may even go back to that chiropractor going, I think about graduating with my bachelor's degree, and my mother saying to me, you think you're a big shot because you went to college. And that really that's part of why I'm afraid to really to build my practice to where it needs to be. You know, so if I'm not serving quote unquote everyone that I can serve, that makes me a selfish person, for example. And so there's all of these things that the person may not be aware of that we can access and they can digest very gently with brain spotting and be able to work through it so that they can meet those goals that they have.
So interesting, and I want to get into a couple of case studies to kind of
Mhm.
paint the picture for our listeners.
Yeah.
But first, and I have to say, I have a couple more mantras, but I'm only going to just start with this one because as you were talking, I was like, wow, are people more likely to come in from the coaching side or from the therapeutic side? So I'm just going to say the mantra, and then we'll go from there. And that is that overcoming these money blocks is a tactical process, right? Which might be more of like the coaching side, but also a psychotherapeutic process. And this is sort of the like, whoa moment because therapy, let's just say this, Beth, that
Mhm.
therapy has a stigma around it.
What?
And
Just like money does, right? Uh-huh.
Right. So let's just attack that because that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about is how can we start to break down our stigma and our issues around going to therapy, about participating in therapy, about becoming better versions of ourselves through therapy. So I wanted to get your sense of that too. And then kind of because you have a funnel coming in from the therapy side and from the coaching side, sort of you know how we can make both of those. I don't know. I think people when they duck out for an appointment during lunch to go see a coach are much more likely to say, hey, I got to go meet with my coach or my mentor or whatever. But when it's the
Mhm.
therapy appointment, it's a totally different story. So I just wanted to
Mhm.
kind of talk about that a little bit because it's very interesting that you're working from both angles so you
Mhm.
the difference.
Yeah. So I'm happy to say that I'm seeing that people aren't as afraid to say that they're seeing a therapist nowadays because, and I think that podcasting has a lot to do with that because there are so many wonderful podcasts out there that really talk about the need in order to address these things so that we can be better people for ourselves and for those that we love, you know. But there are still sometimes when people feel like if you go to a therapist, it means that you're crazy, you know. But
Low limiting belief, right?
well, right. And I mean, also so not the truth, I mean, and I kind of kid people. I said crazy people don't come to therapy. People who know crazy people might come to therapy. Maybe somebody who has a boss who's really demanding and really angry and has issues, and that's putting a lot of stress on them. And if you don't want to become a crazy person, you know going to therapy is a great thing to do because you're able to just unload and digest all of that stuff that happens to you. So when people want to see it, I think that it kind of goes both ways. Sometimes when people go to life coaches, um, they don't want to tell their friends that either because it seems like, well, why do you need somebody to help you figure out how to live? You've been living your whole life, right? Now, when it comes to business coaching, sometimes that's kind of like a badge of honor, like, oh, my business coach says this, right? It'd be great if we lived in a world where everyone thought of therapy in that kind of way, but we're not quite there yet. But I would say this: if you are willing to invest in your own wellness and happiness, then this is a really good step to either, if you're a business owner, definitely get a business coach that can help you. But it may not be all that you need. You may actually need to see a therapist as well. There was a study done several years ago about how psychotherapy can actually make a person as happy as getting a $40,000 a year raise. How crazy is that? I mean, just everyone out there, just imagine that in your paycheck, you got a little slip that said, "Hey, guess what? We're increasing your salary by $40,000." Wow.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
really amazing. Oh my gosh. And it
Uh-huh.
reminds me, and you were talking about podcasts as being, something that's really helped for people to see that, therapy can actually be really amazing and fun. And, if Beth, if you have access to that study and we could put it in the show notes,
Yeah, I do. Mhm.
love that. That would be so cool.
Mhm.
My friend Sherry Salata, who is the one of the co-hosts on the Sherry and Nancy show, they interviewed, one of the top therapists in the country who has a number one, I don't know if it's number one New York Times bestseller, but it's on the New York Times bestseller list. And the whole time, Nancy was saying, "Oh my gosh, a whole hour where I can talk and express, and it's about me." And like, she was so funny. She just literally, it was like a commercial for therapy. I thought it was so great. But also, as you were talking through this, I was like, gosh, there's such an important thing here around semantics. So in my work with nutrition, I never use like junk food. I don't talk about foods as being bad. I don't label, so I don't create shame and blame and all that. It's really funny. I actually, like, even when I'm working with adults, I just really keep it simple. And I have like the go foods that make you, energetic and they're good for your body. And everyone knows what those are. That's broccoli and protein and, fruits and vegetables and all that. Then I say that there are slow foods, the foods that if you eat too much of it, it'll slow you down. And then what it does is it takes out the blame and
Mhm.
shame around food, so that if somebody is going to drink their Diet Coke with their chocolate cake, it's just a slow food thing. It's not a like bad food, right? So when you were talking about the language around therapy, I mean, I wonder if we could, as a profession, just start to talk about, the wellness model, the optimal model, the peak performance model, and kind of, you know,
Yeah.
people listening, like, you do not need a diagnosis. This is not about negative labels. This is about, oh my gosh, getting a $40,000 raise or feeling like you did and feeling great and being the best version of yourself. So,
Right. Yeah. And I'll say that therapists are a group of people who really, as a whole, struggle with money issues and negative beliefs about money. And part of that reason is that many of them feel like I didn't go into this profession to get rich, or people need my help, and it's not really fair for me to not help them. And, also the medical model and being on insurance, you do have to put a diagnosis on a chart in order to use insurance. And, therapists can kind of get blinded to the fact that if you want clients to come to you and really focus on wellness, then having to put a diagnosis on a chart means that you have to focus on the illness, which is really not what we want for our clients, right?
well, and you just touched back on that whole mantra around the obstacles being subtle, and I was thinking I did want to return to that.
Mhm.
So I do want to do that, but I want to, just so that people can really kind of land with what we're talking about, I thought we would do a case study. So,
Mhm.
somebody that comes in, you can, and maybe if we have time to even do a case study where somebody comes in through the coaching
Mhm.
door and then
Mhm.
works through the money issues and kind of what happened in his or her life. And then
Mhm.
if I feel like there's time and there's room, we could maybe do somebody comes in for therapy through that door. So, but
Mhm.
let's start with just somebody that comes in through the coaching door. Beth, I've got
Mhm.
this issue. Let's tackle this. How
Mhm.
long does it take? How many sessions? What happens?
Great question. Many people don't realize that they have money issues because they're like, I got money in the bank. I'm okay. I'm saving and all of that kind of stuff. But they might come in and say, I have this idea that I want to start in my business. Like I want to, develop another stream of income, for example. And it's a great idea. And I've vetted it. I've talked to people like I know it's going to work. But when I start to roll it out, I freeze, right? And so what what's going to happen is that I'm going to be saying to them, okay, so what happens in your body as you think about rolling it out? And they're going to be able to pinpoint, maybe they have some tightness in their throat, maybe their stomach starts churning. We'll find that eye position. And as we're processing what's going to happen with this client, possibly, is that they're going to get to deeper stuff. It could be that this is such a popular one, but people are so blind to, if I start making more money, then I have much more responsibility. Then maybe my spouse won't pull his or her weight. Maybe my kids will expect more. You know, maybe family is going to start, coming to me and asking for money, right? Or I have a belief that if I make more money, and we change our lifestyle, I can't sustain it. That's a huge one too, So it doesn't make sense for me to to actually try to do that, because then I'm putting myself in danger financially, right?
Okay,
Sometimes,
Beth,
yeah.
for those watching from the video, because I haven't done any of my brain spotting interviews with the video, so Beth
Hmm.
just pulled out the pointer. So bring it back up, Beth. This
Hmm.
is super cool. So let's say somebody comes in and says, more money equals more responsibility. It's not
Hmm.
sustainable. First of all, do they know that already? Or is this something that you're locating via a brain spot? Because I'll just interject that I find with brain spotting that it is so great at bringing to the surface the aha moments. Like, and sometimes they're super obvious. Like, more money is more
Hmm.
responsibility isn't even all that, like deep and, cosmic or anything, but
Hmm.
but when you know something in your body, as opposed to just kind of knowing something intellectually, which I think brain
Hmm.
spotting allows people to do, it shifts things. So,
Yeah.
since you've got the visual, kind
Mhm.
of, I'm your client. I'm in front of you. More money equals more responsibility. How do you work with somebody through brain spotting?
Right. So as you think about that more money equals more responsibility, what are you noticing in your body right now?
Oh, we're gonna do me. Oh gosh.
Well, we are, right?
Okay, I love this. Like hot seat. Okay, let me uncross my legs. Okay, so more money. Oh, it always goes to my chest. Like most of
Uh-huh.
your brain spotting, I feel
Okay,
like.
good. And 0 to 10, 10 being highest, 10 being most activated. About how activated is that sensation in your chest on that scale?
I'd say it's about a 4.
Okay, good. And so if you want to go ahead and open your eyes, and just look at the pointer right here. Can you see it on my screen? Okay. So what do you notice here as you're looking at the pointer? Does anything change?
I would say I think it's because I'm looking down,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it
So I
starts.
might just
Yeah.
so I might just ask you to look eye level, even though you're not necessarily looking at the pointer, right? Just look at something straight ahead of you, and what happens in your chest.
Oh, this is good.
Hmm.
This is it. It goes down.
Okay, good. And so just at the same eye level, look at something to your right.
I think
And
it's over on the left.
okay, good. Let's check it out. Mhm. And it's interesting that you know where it is. So I'm just going to even ask you just to tune into that sensation in your chest, that belief that more money equals more responsibility, and see if you can just look around the place on your right, up, down, just a little bit around, and see if you can find the place where you can access that ick, where that stuff is held right now.
I'd say it's almost at eye level, a little bit lower,
Hmm.
sort
Yeah.
of. Yeah, in that like left angle area over there.
Hmm. And where are you feeling it most in your body right now?
It's definitely just the heart.
Yeah, good. And so if this were an actual brain spotting session, ask you to tune into that heart sensation and just be curious about what happens. Just noticing moment by moment, any thoughts, sensations, feelings, anything that wants to come up. And then I would check in with you every once in a while and just let your process guide the guide where we go with this. Okay. So, and if you're listening, hopefully you're not driving out there. But you just tune in moment by moment to what's happening, and the practitioner holds the space for you while you're noticing what's happening as the client. And you'll notice that things come up and process very, very quickly and very gently, because part of brain spotting is, as the practitioner, I'm not just tuning into what's happening with you physically, but I'm also holding a space relationally for you. One thing that we know is that when we feel like we're unable to get past a block, we feel totally alone. And when we have somebody's attuned presence right there with us, it makes it so much easier to get past the block.
That's such a good point, Beth, that I have not talked about with the other brain spotting practitioners that I've interviewed is the importance of, and I'm going to use the word trauma just because it's most well known in this circumstance, but that trauma is released and healed through the presence of another. It's very difficult to heal trauma alone. So let's replace trauma with limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs, I'm just asking, are they difficult to get rid of, to process, to heal alone? Do you find that limiting beliefs are much better healed and processed in the presence of another?
Absolutely. I mean, it's easier to do anything when you have the attuned presence of another person. Now if you're with somebody who's not attuned or who is being judgmental of you, of course that's not helpful, and that can make it even more difficult. We all have inside of us everything that we need to heal, but we also have different parts of self that can also serve as those kind of mean coach kind of presences. So as you think about taking that next step and more responsibility with more money, what might come up for you is I can't handle it. It might be like that one time I tried to, open a lemonade stand. Everyone laughed at me because I only made 20 cents, or whatever it is. It could be something kind of childhood, or it could just be the deep knowing and the deep realization of this feels really heavy. And when you have a practitioner there holding that space who's able to say, yeah, it's heavy, you'll be able to work through that and say, yeah, it's heavy, but I can handle it. And know, not just intellectually, but know in your heart and in your gut that you can handle it. I call it like the music effect. When you're listening to a song on the radio and you've heard it 1,000 times, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, those are the words? And it kind of clicks. Like, you cannot hear it differently from then on. Like, you know it deep in your soul. And that's what happens with brain spotting. And it doesn't really take very long. It can happen in one session. And most of the time when I do my individual work with my coaching clients, it does happen in one session. It's really amazing.
Okay, so those that are watching the videos might have just seen my jaw drop because I'm like, oh my God, one session. And I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of like brief therapy, but okay, so there's so many places to go. Let's close out the case study and okay, so let's say hypothetically that I was
Mhm.
looking over at that spot. I had the bilateral music on. You're holding the space for me. Some childhood memories come up
Mhm.
and we talk through them. I process them, and then I go to that deep knowing space that was then and this is now, and it's a different spot, different time and place.
Mhm.
Then is that it? Like, is that my one brain spotting intervention, or do you find, and how do you know if people need additional sessions? And then the next question is like, what happens in that client's life? Like, do they just go
Mhm.
out and, not build a lemonade stand, but like a lemonade multi-million dollar business? I'm just
That's
curious.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that you kind of answered the question there. You will know if it's worked because they will go out there and do it. So many times I have clients who come to me who want to raise their fees, because I see a lot of people who, attorneys, CPAs, therapists who charge by the hour. And so let's say that it's a therapist, and she charges $100 an hour, and she would like to charge $150 an hour. But when she thinks about doing that, she has that freak out that happens inside of her. Um, Sometimes it doesn't even take brain spotting to actually get that moving. On my website at bethmedina.com, I have a calculator, and it's a fabulous calculator, because sometimes it's the not knowing and not seeing the numbers, not seeing the impact of raising your fees, um, that will make all the difference. With this client, it might be that she's worried that 20% of my clients will disappear if I raise my rates by $20. Now, we all know that's not going to happen, but she doesn't know that, right? She's got this significant fear. And so if she needs brain spotting to unlock that, we're going to see that, not just the tip of the iceberg, but it's way, way deeper, that it may be that that she doesn't really even understand the value that she's providing her clients. Maybe she's thinking, well, I wouldn't pay for therapy. Hopefully not, because as therapists, we certainly do need therapy to get therapy as well. But she may say, well, I would pay $100, but I wouldn't pay $150. Well, that might be a self-worth issue. And if you have a client that's saying your fees are too high, that could be what's happening. Or maybe that they're just not ready to make that investment in their own wellness at that time. And that's okay. But that doesn't have to be something that you absorb as that person's therapist. So if the therapist comes to me and we have that one session and she goes out and raises her fees and she's able to sustain that, then she knows that it's worked, right? And what's interesting is that sometimes people will come in with one issue. Like I had a client who came in with the issue of, I want to start this one program that I want to create. And every time I go to do something, I just feel so like exhausted. I know I need to do like my marketing plan. I need to, do this and that and all these different things. But when I go to do it, I either get exhausted or I get distracted. And as we used Brainspotting in this one session, she was able to realize that it's not just like, I'm not lazy. It's not that I'm procrastinating. It's actually that I don't feel that I'm worthy of the success that this is going to bring me because I can't forgive myself for a mistake I made.
And you're getting into the subtle stuff too, which we have to return to.
Yeah.
But before we go there, I just want to say, so I'm going to summarize this in a mantra, and I'm not going to tell you what number I'm on because I'm like way zooming ahead with all these there's so many aha moments right here. But change can happen in as little as one session.
Mhm.
Issues, there's always going to be additional layers to dig into in order to realize that peak performance. So before we go into the subtle thing, I just want to say if somebody was listening and again, they're coming through the coaching door and they hear it could be as little as one session, just as a range, what would you say you would suggest to somebody as far as a number of Brainspotting sessions to get through additional layers?
If we're dealing with a coaching client, so not a therapy client, and we're dealing, it depends, of course, on what the issue is. Like getting off of insurance when you're a therapist or a chiropractor there are multiple issues there, multiple layers. And honestly, there are multiple things that you really need to be willing to do. You have to market yourself in a different way. And you have to be willing to thin out some of your practice. And you have to move past those feelings of what will these clients do, or what will these patients do if they can't see me, and all of that kind of stuff. So I would say that most clients can work through all of the stuff that's keeping them stuck within 3 sessions, believe it or not.
That's
Because
incredible.
It's that rapid.
Yeah.
When you think about how quickly a bone can heal, your body and brain already know how to do it. And if you break your arm and you go to the doctor and he sets the bone, he's not fixing your arm. He's just setting the right conditions. Your brain and body are fixing your arm because we have that innate ability to heal both physically and emotionally from things. And the same thing happens with Brainspotting.
That's so, I think for listeners, they will be really interested to hear that this change is possible in such rapid time. I mean, I'm a student of quantum medicine, and it's all about like quantum leaps, right? And things, non-locality, and things do not necessarily need to be in this particular order. So I'm with you, sister.
Awesome.
But I want to go to this. I want to go to the subtle things, because what you were talking about in terms of there's self-worth issues, there's even selfish, like if I charge this much, I'll look greedy. There's like assumptions about what other people think, like people don't value this or whatever. So how do you uncover these? Because very few people are going to walk into your office, I would think, and say these things. So how do you uncover? I have a theory, but I want you to tell us how you uncover these subtle issues, because I think that's where the juice is.
Well, I will tell you that as a Brainspotting practitioner, this is the beauty of Brainspotting. I don't have to be the excavator and the expert because the client is the expert, even though they're unaware, possibly. Where we start is with why they're coming in, and their brain and body is going to gently unwind this process until they get to that place where they are aware. Just going through my own process, this is actually how I kind of discovered brain spotting for business blocks. I was in private practice for about 7 years and taking only one insurance. And I started getting so ill. I was developing some heart issues. And, I ignored it at first, like most people do, just kept pressing along because I loved my work. And it got to the point where I really could not ignore it anymore. And so I was a brain spotting practitioner at that time. And so I started thinking, well, there's something called self-spotting that we learn and that you can actually learn about in the book Brainspotting, David Grant's book Brainspotting. It's fantastic. So I started doing some self-work, some self-brain spotting. And I worked through a lot of stuff on my own, but I just couldn't, I got to the point where I wrote the letter, and I was like all ready. And I started talking to clients about getting off of insurance and stuff, but I couldn't pull the trigger, right? And I kind of had an idea about what it was about. Like, it would really suck if I torpedoed my practice because, I need the income. But I decided that since I couldn't get past this myself, I would call a brain spotting practitioner and say, you're going to help me with this. And here's what I need. And so we met for 90 minutes. And about 30 minutes into the process, I was done. And so we chatted for the last hour. And what was happening underneath was that it wasn't just about torpedoing the practice. It was about, if that happened, I'd be letting my family down. And my family really needed me to be in a place where I could be successful. But that wasn't it. I kind of had an idea about that. But what opened up was, I cannot be successful doing what I'm doing now. I will be dead. But if I am able to get off of insurance, it opens this whole world up. And the sky really is the limit. And so I was able to move forward and get off insurance with confidence. And I will tell you, it was the best business decision I have ever made, bar none. The best. Because now I have much more time for myself, for my family, for my health. And I can do many more things as far as serving the community. I am one of the founding members of the Southeast Brainspotting Institute, and that's one of my passions. I also work with foster children as well at a local organization. And these are the kind of things that I couldn't do if I were seeing clients for 30, 40, 50 hours in my office, So once I was really able to focus on the why, and that's also something that I help clients do, it was really easy for me to move forward. And so that's what I love helping people find, because it's already within yourself. Yeah.
I love that. And, normally everyone's heard all the mantras. So people are just going to have to go to the show notes page and read them, because you've had so many great nuggets of wisdom throughout. But I will also say, kind of to summarize your story is, and I think this comes from Marianne Williamson, or maybe she was quoting somebody else, but oftentimes we are more afraid we think we are afraid of our failures, but we're actually afraid of our successes. Mm-hmm. So what you do, Beth, is you help with, the obvious blocks, the money doesn't grow on trees or whatever. And then the subtle, and through that combined approach, really allow people to do things, boost confidence, achieve goals that they never thought possible. So I'm going to call this episode Bust Through Money Blocks with Brainspotting and Beth Medina. And please give everyone information. So you mentioned your website, bethmedina.com, but other places people can learn about your work, follow you, be in touch, etc.
Sure. Well, they can find me on Facebook, Beth Medina, or Beth Medina Coaching. And also my psychotherapy website is brainspottingjax.com. That's Brainspotting with a JAX for Jacksonville at the end.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all of this incredible inspiration. I hope people are ready to break down their own limiting beliefs about therapy, stigma, and get some help and be their best versions of themselves and have a great, fun, abundant life.
Me too. It's beautiful. Thank you.